Good afternoon, everybody. It's a beautiful day out here at Penny's Bend Nature Preserve in Durham. This is Milo Pyne. I'm a Durham native and retired botanist and ecologist. We're going to look around the preserve a little bit and see some wildflowers. It's a good time to see lots of unusual wildflowers out here. This is a great site. There's an unusual geology here called Diabase that weathers to a less acidic soil. There's a lot of open areas where these sun-loving wildflowers thrive, and we're going to go take a look at some of them. All right, here we are in the field, the big field at Penny's Bend. And some of this site is allowed to be in a forested condition, and some of it is managed with fire and mowing to keep it very open, because some of the special wildflowers here need a lot of light and they like to be in the full sun. This is wild blue indigo, one of the signature plants of this site here at Penny's Bend. And this is a little unusual for a number of reasons. It likes all that light, and we think of the Piedmont as being a forested region, but we had woodlands and openings historically, and that's where some of these rare plants have evolved and where they live today. Most of the books and websites you go to will call this Baptisia australis, but it's really a variety of that, or now that's been described as a full species called Baptisia aberrans. So it's very special. It's more of a localized variety of Baptisia australis. It likes eastern, drier, open, woodland, prairie-like habitats. Now we're going to show you a view of this plant from above, and you'll see that because the leaflets are mostly turned sideways, when you look at it from above, it kind of vanishes. You don't see the leaflets from the top as much. This is one of the plants that is found here because of the unusual soils derived from the igneous diabase rock, which is less acidic than the normal rocks of this region. This is another one of our open habitat plants here in the front field at Penny's Bend. We usually think of clematis as being a vine. This is almost like a little shrub here. This is Clematis ochroluca. Here's one of the seed heads. The flowers look like a little upside down vase with very thick, almost leathery sepals. So some of its relatives are called leather flowers. And then this seed head looks like a mop head, or like one of the animals from a Dr. Seuss cartoon or something. And it's very pretty. The little tips of the seeds are golden and very shiny. It's a beautiful plant. It may just be something about the seasons and the time of year now. In late April, we get a lot of blue flowers. The sages are blooming now, but this is what we call blue-eye-grass, narrowleaf blue-eye-grass, Sisyrinchium angustifolium. There's a lot of this out here in the field. It's not particularly related to the diabase soils here at Penny's Bend, but it certainly likes the open habitat and does very well in the full sun. I also have this growing all over my yard in Durham. So if you come visit the front field here at Penny's Bend and you find this patch of 3 leafleted shrubs, I don't want you to be scared. This is not poison ivy, oddly enough. You would surely think this is poison ivy or some funny looking poison oak. This is actually Fragrant Sumac, and I don't recommend that you do this, but if you did crush a leaf, you would smell a kind of varnishy, sweet, varnishy sort of odor. So Fragrant Sumac, Rus aromatica. And all I can say is the central leaflet has a real wedge-shaped base, and it's not on a stalk. So the 3 leaflets kind of come together in some of the leaves, and some of them they're more separated. It's a shiny, the poison ivy is like that, so you can easily get concerned that this was poison ivy, but it's a Fragrant Sumac, an unusual shrub for our area. This is one of 3 wild gingers that are here. 2 of them are evergreen. This is Hexastylus aerifolia. And if you get lucky, you'll find a cluster of flowers at the base. These look like little vases, or maybe the Greek amphora type of vase. They're greenish brown and kind of leathery. And they live here on the ground and are pollinated by ground-dwelling insects. And that tells us that this plant is part of an ancient lineage that began its evolutionary journey on Earth before there were flying insects, because ground-dwelling insects preceded flying insects. So this is Hexastylus aerifolia. And the leaves are very aromatic. It does have a ginger-like smell, although it's not related to the ginger of commerce. So this is a little plant here on the banks of the Eno. We call it green and gold, and it's unusual because it's in the aster family, like daisies and that sort of plant, and they usually bloom in the fall. So this is a spring blooming member of the aster family. And if you just walk by this, you might think it was a buttercup, but it's got a different floral structure. These aren't really petals. These are actual, what we call ray flowers. And the middle is the disc flowers. So it's a composite head composed of many little flowers, whereas a buttercup is just one single flower with a lot of seeds in the middle. So you might mistake this for a buttercup, but it's a member of the aster family. So we mostly talk about native plants out here at Penny's Bend, but we saw this patch of Youngia, which is a new invasive exotic. It's kind of like a fuzzy dandelion. And if you're very careful, you can just remove the whole plant like this. Fortunately, this one's not fruiting yet, so we can just fold that up and put it in our bag and take it to the landfill. We're going to remove this whole patch here. It's a new arrival as far as our invasive species are concerned, so I'm really trying to encourage people to keep it out of our natural areas, but even if you have it in your yard, you ought to go ahead and pull it up right now. All right, so this nice big plant here is called wild comfrey, and it is related to comfrey. It's in the borage family. Usually this time of year you just see these big basal leaves, but we got lucky to find a plant that's in flower. It's got a lot of little flowers followed by these sort of spiky looking little fruits. And the other name for this is hound's tongue, which is the leaf is like a big dog's tongue. And that name for the genus was Cynoglossum. Cyno means dog and glossum means tongue. So literally that means a hound's tongue or dog's tongue. But somebody came along, I guess their name is Anderson, and they decided that this is no longer a Cynoglossum, it's in a different genus. And somebody decided to call it Anderson glossum, which is a little odd. So now it's Anderson's tongue, whoever Anderson is. We're here in kind of a woodland. There are trees here, but it's kind of an open canopy. This plant's perfectly happy here where it gets a pretty good bit of sunlight. We've got two plants here that are feverfew or wild quinine, the genus Parthenium. This is the more unusual one, the Glade wild quinine or Glade feverfew. It's got these leaves with bases that wrap around the stem a little bit. We call that auriculate or clasping. So this is Parthenium auriculatum, and it's got a very hairy stem. It's hairier than the other species, the more common species. So this is Glade wild quinine. Okay, we're right here on the banks of the Eno River, and all this area got scoured at least once during the winter. And these are little plants, but they're very tenacious. They hung on through all that flooding and scouring. People call this Quaker ladies. It's a type of bluet. It's a common bluet. Very little four-party flowers with a yellow center, kind of a pale purple with a yellow center. This is Houstonia cerulea or cerulea. Cute little plant. Again, common bluet. And right down here, this is its relative, another Houstonia, the summer bluet, Houstonia purpurea. And as the name would imply, this is going to bloom a little later, but again, it has a four-party flower. These are in a family called the Rubiaceae. So we're at Penny's Bend on a rocky little trail that goes up from the river up to a big rock outcrop that we call the Little Blowing Rock. And along this trail there's three plants that are kind of similar to one another. They're all monocots, which means they're like related to lilies or grasses in a general sense. This is what we call Solomon's Plume. And it's got its flowers out at the end of the stalk in a little plume or a raceme. So we call this Myanthemum racemosum. It used to be in a genus called Smilacina. And of these three plants, there's Solomon's Plume, Solomon's Seal, and then another plant or two called bellwort. And this is probably the easiest one to recognize because it's got these three very prominent veins that you can see on the undersurface of the leaf. So this is Solomon's Plume. And right here is a small plant of Solomon's Seal. And they vary in size a lot. This is just a small plant, but it has a paler underneath leaf surface and does not have those three prominent veins. So this is a little shrub that people usually notice in the fall because it has prominent, very beautiful red fruit with orange berries. This is Hearts of Buston, or Hearts of Buston with Love, or strawberry bush. It's called Euonymus americanus, and we got lucky and found it with its little sort of ivory-colored, yellowish, five-parted flowers. And I hear that deer like to eat this, so the fact that we have a nice tall plant here maybe means that we don't have too many deer. So in our native flora, the families of plants with opposite leaves are very few. Here's the opposite leaf. This one kind of cheated. It's not precisely opposite, but in general they're opposite. And this is in the ash family, but it's not ash, it's Fringetree, or some people call it old man's beard because of these droopy white flowers, which are actually very fragrant. So we're fortunate to find this in bloom today. Its Latin name is Cheonanthus virginicus. Or granny gray beard, old man's beard, or Fringetree. There's one last wildflower I wanted to show you. Earlier we saw Solomon's Plume with the flowers in a spike out at the end of the stalk. This is a true Solomon's Seal with these pairs of ivory-colored flowers with a hint of green. They come out of the axils of the leaves. And these leaves are kind of a more bluish green. They're what we call glaucous. They're sort of waxy looking. In particular, the undersurface is very pale green with a waxy bloom that you can sort of rub off. And these leaves don't have the three extremely prominent veins that Solomon's Plume had. This video was brought to you by the Eno River Association. We're working to protect wildlands and wild waters in North Carolina, Piedmont, Durham, and Orange counties, to protect our nature preserve, natural areas, habitat for wild animals, and clean water for people in North Carolina.